So I jailbroke my family's Wii recently. It was a lot of fun, being the third Wii I've ever hacked, this time with a much more streamlined and easier to understand process than either of my previous attempts. The growth of technology and software with each passing year is hard to understate. Since I live with my wife now, this Wii was for my younger siblings still living with my parents. The process of homebrewing with the newest methods offered me practice for the Wii I personally own and share with my wife. When coming to the topic of games, I asked my dad what games would be best to place on the console first. In my own childhood, we had several games, but I don't think we ever exceeded 25 discs in total before the disc reader died. It was always a big event to go to a GameStop or a Best Buy and buy a new game. I remember distinctly around the time Santa Claus had gifted us the movie Cars 2. My mom said that if I did well enough in school, I could go with Dad and get a new Wii game. I did well, and Dad took me to Best Buy, where I laid my eyes upon the Cars 2 video game. I picked it, he bought it, and I spent almost as much time in that game as I had in Mater National, the only other Cars game I had at the time. This type of experience doesn't quite exist anymore, as only some game stores I've come across have a used retro games section, and Best Buy only sells whatever top 5 titles they still bothered to keep in stock for PS5 and Xbox Series XS. Even when buying PS4 games, pretty much all of the titles I own are used from GameStop. There's a ritual in buying them, sure, but it dawns on me just how easy it is to be a droning consumer with the adult money I have now. Anyway, my dad said to pack in just the core experiences and leave it at that. Extra games could be added in secret as part of birthday or holiday presents. This made sense as we were still trying to figure out a ritualizing method for the acquisition of new games. Dad made a point in saying, though, that he didn't want the kids to get decision fatigue and wind up not wanting to play anything. This took me aback in a way I wasn't quite ready for, but it forced a great deal of pondering that I've only just now begun to write. Because, as finally tying to the title of this little video, I experience this exact decision fatigue every time I open Steam. I call what I'm about to talk about the Steam library phenomenon, for lack of a better term. I'm sure there's plenty of other people that have discussed this in far more depth and much more brain analysis than I'm able to give, but I just wanted to express what I have to say in my own words. It is surprisingly easy to have too many, things. I've learned that the hard way, having lived in a trailer for the last 8 or so months, the last 6 of which have been spent with my beloved wife. The world makes it incredibly easy to just consume, and I think a lot of that comes strangely down to the fact that a decent-sized container of garlic salt costs more than the repackaging of Commander Keen's first 5 episodes on Steam. It's quite easy to justify a purchase of Portal and Portal 2, especially in a bundle, since they cost less than even a t-shirt from Ola England's store. Now, how does this relate to games? Well, I've been living, by comparison to the way I lived with my parents, quite sparse, and while there's been momentary lapses of struggle with letting some things go, even just temporarily, it's been an incredibly freeing experience. It's opened my mind to getting rid of plenty of things that just don't help me, like my smartphone. Now I have a flip phone, and my wife will be joining me in that venture as well. What this entire lifestyle allows us to do, most of all, is use the things we have wisely and resourcefully. We make the most out of what we have, and we value those things more for it. And then I look at my computer, and I just get frustrated. The computer is not what it once was from my childhood. It's not a place where the internet lives. It's not a place you can find cool videos about cool things. It's not a place where you can watch highlights of sports or ask my parents to play games on it in the same way that I would ask for the Wii. In my life, especially working from home, the computer is an appendage. For many in this day and age, especially in my age bracket, the computer is like a phone. You can't carry it, sure, but you're pretty much attached to it. Your entire life kind of exists there. This applies relative to the person viewing this, of course, but I know that in my own life, the computer is a hive I return to. I plug into it so that I can work and make money for my family, but it's also where my games live. It's also where my online friends live, providing an outlet for varying degrees of poor socialization. It's also where YouTube lives, something I've had to download many plugins for just to make it a not overstimulating and less addicting experience. It's where X lives, where I can read from folks of varying degrees of intelligence and just get bored at the world being the same old place full of the same old stupid people. So I take a break from all that activity on the computer, and then stay on the computer, move to Steam, and take a look at the vast amount of games that I have, and I just can't be bothered to play one. There's so many to choose from that I don't know how to narrow it down. Say I'm in the mood for a shooter. Okay, what shooter? Doom 93? Doom 2016? Quake? I guess I could always putz about on Slop Fortress 2. This is probably a personal problem, but I wanted to talk about it to see what people in the comments think about this sort of thing. Allow me to run a comparison point. I own 3 consoles. One is a PS4 that I was gifted by my friend when he left for the Air Force. One is a PS3 that I received from my old boss in exchange for a guitar amp for his daughter. The last one is a Wii that I recently bought so that my wife and I could use a Wii Fit just to see what it was like, but also to begin a collection of Wii games that our children can grow up on in the same way we did. Now on the PS4, I probably have about 20 discs ranging from various games that my wife and I are interested in. Oddly enough, we barely play any of them ever. I have 6 Need for Speed games for the PS3 and Portal 2, and that's all. Oddly enough, we barely play those either, but that's due to outside reasons. The Wii is the system that we play most and where we're most competitive with each other, in spite of the fact that I haven't even homebrewed it yet, and we have a total of 1 game, Wii Sports. This is rather confusing when looked at this way. How can the console with just 1 game be the one that's played the most, especially since I own plenty of good games for the other consoles like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2010 and Doom 2016? Well, I actually have one more console, the Nintendo DS Lite. My wife gifted it to me from a Facebook Marketplace find alongside 6 games the seller was parting with. Outside of an inconsistent R button and a missing stylus, this DS works perfectly well. 4 of these games just don't interest me that much looking at the artwork, but 2 of them are games I've now invested a great deal of time into, those being LEGO Star Wars: The Complete Saga and Cars Race-O-Rama. I never played Cars Race-O-Rama on the Wii as a child, though I owned Mater National and Cars 2, having fond memories with both. I have Cars 3 for the PS4, and it's fine. I like the time trial mode. LEGO Star Wars is a game I only played on the Wii once at a friend's house. I'm well aware that the DS experience of these games are not the same as any other console ports, but I find myself sinking an incredible amount of time and focus into these games. In part, I credit the lack of options as to why I've given the games so much attention. Yes, I stuck with them because they're mechanically consistent and enjoyable to play, but if I had, say, 20 more DS games, I don't know if I'd be playing them as much as building a collection of them. I think that's something a lot of folks my age get caught up in. Nostalgia is a market that's been tapped into rather aggressively over the last 5 or so years, especially in the post-COVID world we live in now. People seem to want an avenue of escapism more than ever before, and while I wholeheartedly disagree with using any medium of art as a means of escapism, due to reasons I shall explain in the future, I understand why people want this. All they want is to call back to a time when life was simpler and happier, where they didn't know as much and they could retreat to the stability that games provided their emotions. Perhaps circumstances within their family or external lives couldn't provide that same stability, and that's where you get a lot of stories of "this movie saved my life" or "this game changed me" from various folks on YouTube now. Now, to make something I said offhand earlier relevant again, what my kind, Gen Z, has that we didn't as children is money. We might have less time than ever before, but we do have adult money. If you're lucky enough to have a job in this economy, you know the temptation to just buy things because, well, why not? Games are a particularly ripe medium for this, as pointed out earlier by how the 2 mainline Portal games cost less than a t-shirt from even the store of a cool music YouTuber. So if you've paid your monthly bills and you're covered for food, why not spend a little extra on a potentially enjoyable experience only to play 3 hours of it and forget about it as it adds to the mountain of games you already have through Steam? Or you can invest in your nostalgia. You can buy those games you once grew up on, perhaps even through the same consoles, and with just a hard drive and a bit of know-how you can hack a console of any age up to the 7th generation with the capacity to play any game from its time period. Essentially, with the right tools, even your Wii, Xbox 360, PS2, or PS3 can be transformed into their own Steam machines through homebrewing and soft modding. In my personal experience, my parents never let me game on the computer outside of discs, because they didn't want the computer to become a place where games lived. Consoles existed in the house because that's where the games lived. You went to a console to play games, and you used the computer as a tool. Personally, the computer was a place where I would make LEGO stop-motion movies through Windows Movie Maker, and animate in 3D on Autodesk Maya for an animation class I was taking. It was also where I could access my brand new email that my uncle would send me resources to continue learning guitar over after I left my in-person lessons. The computer was for learning and working. The consoles were for gaming. Perhaps I personally struggle more with the separation than most people because of this experience. After all, I'm well aware of how the PC provides benefits for gaming consoles simply cannot provide on superficial and core levels. Mods are meaningless to a man like me, but I understand that PCs have been ahead of consoles in terms of hardware capabilities and performance output for a long time. That seems to be changing with the rise of DLSS and AI-generated frames in newer equipment to hide the fact from the common consumer that we've hit the point of maximum output, and from here it's only going to go down as labor increases to accommodate data usage that's simply too high. As a result, folks like me turn to the consoles of my own time and move back to an overall less stimulating yet more gratifying experience of just grabbing one of the few discs you have, inserting it, and just playing, no other questions. There can be a point, however, where you go too far. The particular struggle, as pointed out by my dad with his children's Wii now, is that he doesn't want them to receive decision fatigue through seeing so many titles on USB Loader GX and not wanting to play any of them because they're scared to commit to one title at a time. He already has a hard enough time managing that on the computer, as he's had to let kids game on the computer just because fascinating experiences have grown there to a point he cannot ignore. I also have this concern for myself and my own children, as I don't want to give them the idea that they can just have whatever they want and that they get to squander it by not using it. What I'm talking about essentially is the virtue of prudence, the ability to govern and discipline oneself through reason. It takes a certain kind of effort, depending on the kind of person you are, to purposefully limit your options to what you know you like to interact with and going no farther. Of course, dip your toes into a new experience when you want to, but don't grab everything you can relating to that one experience. Just get the one thing and see how you like it. I have fallen prey many times to the temptation of things like Steam bundles, where all the Doom games are on sale together and I bought them. Turns out I really only come back to 2 or 3 of them. I haven't even finished Quake 1 in spite of buying all of them in a bundle, and I haven't even finished any of the Wolfenstein games yet. I look at the options, and I get so stuck as to what to play that I just give up and go back to a game I've grown to hate because at least there I know my limits and I'm moderately comfortable in not choosing to actually play anything at all. That game, by the way, is Team Fortress 2. Now, I'm not a brain scientist, and for as much as I can read and learn about this stuff, as I will continue to, I don't have the technical know-how right now as to why all of this happens. I don't know why I think like this, and I don't know why others think so similarly. I know it's one of these things where a Redditor can say that this entire video is some kind of copium, but I've experienced enough people telling me that they think the same to where I'm thoroughly convinced that this isn't just a me problem. There's something deeper about this, and if there's anyone in the comments who has any ideas, please let me know. I'm very interested in studying this phenomenon further, especially in conjunction with other subjects that I will soon discuss on this channel. I mean, as I was writing this, my wife mentioned how this phenomenon seems eerily similar to how I use YouTube on the TV. I've made it so that YouTube no longer has a feed on my computer, but whenever I look at YouTube on the PS4, my addiction to scrolling kicks back in, and I just start adding any video that looks vaguely in line with my interests to the watch later list. My wife remarks in particular that wishlisting games on Steam and even buying them but never playing them is kind of like someone's irresponsible watch later list. They will add hundreds of videos, but watch maybe 10 of them in a week. And then when I do watch those videos, there's 1 or 2 gems in a sea of, that was fine, but overall a waste of time. A lot of videos on the platform nowadays, you kinda already know what they're going to say, and the few video essay formats that somehow still get views are so standard in their practice that by the first minute, I've predicted the entire video almost word for word. It's pretty frustrating. And yes, the Steam library and the Steam storefront is exactly like this, with just how much it facilitates any low-effort garbage these days. I mean, look at Poppy Playtime. Enough said. Enough! I'll end with this. The Steam library phenomenon is very easy to circumvent and control by way of consoles, because at least you can't buy every disc ever, especially for used games, and you can control what games you place on your hard drives for homebrewed consoles, but for Steam, it's shockingly convenient and easy to just keep buying things that you're not even sure you'll be interested in. I have had several games on my Steam wishlist that I claimed to be interested in, only to then not ever play them or realize too late that I just didn't care for what it was providing. And while it is a bit of a spoiler in terms of not having the raw experience for yourself, watching playthroughs on YouTube really helps make rational decisions about what you buy, especially in an age where quality isn't guaranteed anymore. Like, for as poor as Mater National is as a game, especially in comparison to the first game on an objective level, there's a reason that game still kept me so captivated as a child, beyond the fact that I could free roam Radiator Springs and channel my fanaticism about cars as a franchise. The game is mechanically simple enough to get into, and it's one of those games that provides what I'd call a comfortably mid experience, where the game isn't necessarily great or terrible, but it's one of those titles where you can shrug and say, yeah, well, it's still an alright game, and it can be appreciated for the pretty okay experience that it is. I find a shockingly low amount of those kinds of games in today's world, especially on Steam, where a lot of their front page is still being overrun by NSFW games. Okay, I was going to end with that, but I sat on this thought for about a week and wanted to come back with one more thought. Part of the skill issue on my end might also be that I was raised to finish games I started playing. That applied to pretty much everything in life. If you wanted to go outside and play, you had to finish your schoolwork. If you wanted to play a game with a sibling, you had to finish it because that's good sportsmanship. It doesn't matter how much you get walloped. This is basic stuff. I think what I find myself accidentally doing more and more is either not finishing games I start or playing games that don't have a legitimate end. For example, I have recently taken great satisfaction in playing through Doom 16 on the PS4. Going through every difficulty and getting better as I progress. It's incredibly satisfying to stick with pretty much one game and just get better and better at it, but most importantly to actually finish the game. Again, I know that's an entirely personal statement, but there might be something to that as an objectively measurable experience. Part of my problem right now, as I'm observing my own mental behavior, is that I mostly play PvP multiplayer games like Team Fortress 2 that don't have an actual end. I also have a rather large backlog of physical PS3 and PS4 games that I still haven't touched or only touched once. I have way more than that on Steam, and I think my brain has a hard time with all of the decisions because it doesn't just see the library as how much I have to call my own, and more so how much I have to finish. I mean, why else would I buy a game? To just collect it? That's a side benefit, more or less, but I'm not interested in being a collector necessarily. The point of getting a game, you would think, is to actually play it. I think the Steam library phenomenon is, at the very least, a contributor in why there are so many people that don't actually play the games that they buy. Like, you see Steam achievements for a game, and you wonder why it's not 100% for at least the most basic achievements. I think people just like adding to the pile more than actually bothering to sort through the pile to see what's good or what's worth their time. I'm making a documentary series on various video games to do just that, see what's good and where the decline of various genres actually started, nailing it as close to the very day as I possibly can. It's still very much in the works, but my first series is coming along nicely as far as script writing goes, so if you're interested in little pieces of that, stay tuned, I guess. Point being, I think the Steam library phenomenon is somewhat to blame for all this, as it's not like you can just go to a game store, buy 10 physical games, and then sit down and play them all one by one to see if the purchase was really worth it. Though admittedly, you probably would already have curated your experiences to what you knew you would probably like when you bought the games. You'd also probably have a much easier time with impulse control when actually holding the game in your hand than just seeing it non-tangibly on the screen. Digital purchasing allows a bit more laziness in decision-making for this vein, and I observe it within myself, but I don't know how far it extends. If anyone else could add on to this idea, let me know in the comments. As a question for you viewers to ponder, if you were forced, gun to your head, to stick with 10 games, if you even have 10, and 10 games only to play for the rest of your life, what 10 games would you be ultimately fatigued by the least long-term? Bonus points if you can keep your choices locked to a single system for ease of access.